Good morning. It's Saturday, 19th of June, back in the Nook on what is actually a cool, cloudy day. Temperature has dropped, and I've had some interesting things arrive in the post and some things I've found on the shelves which seem which just spoke to me that I need to unbox. And basically, the one I need to unbox this morning is this. Okay, this is a copy of Munchkin, Steve Jackson Games, Kill the Monsters, Steal the Treasure, Stab Your Buddy. Okay, it's 20 years old, 2001. I found a sealed copy. Why I've had a sealed copy for probably 15 years or so is another story in itself, in that I used to write reviews for Steve Jackson's Ezyme Pyramid back when it was basically online and appeared weekly, and I would get store credit, and so I had got copies of lots of things, and one of these would have been a copy of Munchkin. So if you've never played it, essentially Munchkin is a parody game. It's a parody of Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy role-playing games, and of a particular style of play, where looting the body, taking the treasure, optimizing your stats is the play, not necessarily the role-playing. Role-playing goes out the window. So in this game, essentially, it's a parody of that, where you explore a dungeon. There is no dungeon. Kill the monsters, loot the treasure, go up a level, and the aim is to go up from level 1 to level 10, arming yourself with whatever is available. So whether that's a ridiculous horned helmet, carrying an enormous hammer, and armed with a chainsaw, which obviously you're not going to find in a dungeon, but that's the point of the game. It's a parody of the genre. So this came out in 2001. It would win the Origins Award for Best Traditional Card Game, and it would go on to, or has gone on to, spawn numerous expansions and iterations. So very quickly after this, you had basically Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, basically the Wild West, Munchkin Cthulhu, Munchkin Vampire, Munchkin Zombies, Munchkin Star Munchkin, Munchkin Spies, Munchkin Martial Arts. Basically, taking other genres and parodying them from pop culture, but essentially the gameplay remained the same. And even after, it's gone even further. So essentially, this has become a template for innumerable different games. So Munchkin Shakespeare, Munchkin basically SpongeBob SquarePants, Munchkin Harry Potter, Munchkin Warhammer 40,000, Munchkin Pathfinder, Munchkin. There are Disney expansions. There are numerous core sets, essentially, that you can pick up and play. Gameplay is the same, but the artwork and the theme is different in each case. So let's see what we've got in here. Let's have a look at the back. Okay, so what it says on the back: go down in the dungeon, kill everything you meet, backstab your friends and steal their stuff, grab the treasure and run. Admit it, you love it. This standalone card game captures the dungeon experience with none of that stupid role-playing stuff. All you have to do is kill monsters and grab magic items. And what magic items? Don the horny helmet and the boots of butt kicking. Wield the staff of napalm, or maybe the chainsaw of bloody dismemberment. Start by slaughtering the potted plant and the drooling slime, and work your way up to the plutonium dragon. Fast playing and silly, Munchkin can reduce any role-playing group to hysteria. And while they're laughing, you can steal their stuff. Munchkin has sold hundreds of thousands of copies and been translated into French, German, Italian, Spanish and Dutch. It won the Origins Award for Best Traditional Card Game in 2001, and its supplements have won Origins Awards every year since. Okay, it's designed for 3 to 6 players. 2 can play but don't. And playing time is about an hour. Okay, and if I described it as essentially as basically Ameritrash, I wouldn't be far wrong. And the difference is essentially you've got 2 types of board game in the board gaming hobby. You have Euro games and Ameritrash. Euro games tend to prefer balance and competition, whereas Ameritrash are heavy. And the thing is, the other thing about Euro games is they tend to be about the mechanics to which a theme has been applied. Ameritrash is kind of the reverse. Lots of theme, and less of a focus on the mechanics, and generally lots of luck and lots of sort of like take that kind of mechanics. And then there are examples of both, and both have their advantages and disadvantages, and basically different play styles and so on. This is essentially Ameritrash, and again, that's not to decry the game. It's still fun. It's heavily thematic. Basically, the Dungeon Bash. It is basically said lots of things, and it has got a take that element, because essentially, once you start playing, if you're somebody out the lead, okay, you get to the point where you stop wanting to so much support each other, okay, in getting treasure. You want to stop the person out in front. So let's have a look inside. Just get the knife. So basically, that. So there we go. Let's just. And here you can see, essentially, you've got on the side Munchkin 2, Munchkin 3, expansions for the core set. You have Star Munchkin, which parodied science fiction, Munchkin Bites, which parodied basically vampires and the goth culture and that kind of thing. And then on the back you've got something called Munchkin Blender. So you could essentially take all of those games, throw them into the blender as it were, connect them up and play one big multi-genre game. So what you've got inside is this. Quite a big box and comparatively few contents. So basically just go through essentially. There is 2 decks of cards, die, and the rules. So, check the die there. So you got basically. Let's have a look. The cards are like that. So you've got Friendship Potion. Play during any combat. Discard all monsters in the combat. No treasure is gained. Usable only once. So you've got one-off treasures like that, and then you've got things that you can use in combat. So bow with ribbons, +4 bonus, usable by elf only. It can be sold, and you get an indication of how many hands it can be used by. Because essentially, what you control is a figure, and essentially basically is a representation of a figure on in the cards, and so that basically that figure is you. So you have 2 hands, you've got 2 feet, you've got a backpack and a hat, and you can wear something, and then you can carry things, and that's about it really. Essentially, if you think about the language of sort of like role playing, you're talking about encumbrance there. So and you think about that in kind of a logical way. Okay, you just can't encumber yourself. Sort of, okay, I'm going to take a bow and a staff and a 2-handed sword. Oh, and a short sword. Oh, and I better have that pole arm, etc. Okay, you're carrying what is logical, and you get different races. So you have human, halfling, dwarf, elf, and so on. And the rules. Here we go. The rules. Okay, and inside that, and it looks all quite dense, and it's not. Essentially, there's quite a lot of very clear exploration of how the game is played. So what happens is essentially what you do is you open a door, draw one type of card. If it's a monster, you fight it. If it's a curse, you play it. If it's treasure, it goes into your. You basically you take it. If you didn't encounter a monster, you look for trouble. Basically, you can play monsters from your own card. And if you killed a monster, then basically you loot the room with the treasures. And that's really it. That said, if you can't defeat the monsters, and the thing is you need to defeat monsters to gain levels, and so get up to 10th level, then essentially you can look to your other players and go, okay, I can't defeat this. Will you work with me? You can negotiate and say, okay, well, if I defeat this creature, you can have the first pick of treasure. Or you can have 2 treasures, and essentially back and forth, and sometimes people will cooperate or they won't. Later on in the game, you get down to that point where a player is 9th level. You're never going to negotiate, okay, and that's fine because essentially you're attempting to stop that person from winning. In the meantime, the other players can throw monsters at you during the combat to make it more difficult. But if you do negotiate and you win, you're the person who gets the level, the other person gets the treasures, and that will improve their ability to defeat monsters on their turn. So, let's just have a look. And essentially, to defeat a monster, you tote up your level plus all the adds. So, for example, like that +4 bonus. From the elf, basically the elf's bow with ribbons. Roll the die, try and defeat the actual level of the creature. So let's just have a look, see if there's anything else on here. Basically, got a bit of advertising blurb. That's fine. So you literally Munchkin bites, Munchkin blender on the back, Munchkin dice, Super Munchkin for superheroes, Star Munchkin, Munchkin food for the martial arts. But again, there is a Munchkin book card game to suit your preferred genre if you go looking for it. So that's just, open up cards. So to be honest, it's been a while since I have played Munchkin. Obviously, it's been a while since I've played any board games because of the pandemic. But Munchkin has it's a bit too light and a bit too luck based and a bit too take that for some people, and that's fine. Not every game is for everybody's tastes. So let's I'm just going to separate these cards because it's important to. Here we go. Separate them into the 2 types because of what they are. So you've got 2 types of card, really. I will just showcase you some of them. Just trying to get into this. There we go. Get underneath the cellophane. So you've got 2 types of cards, and they're easily differentiated by their backs. So essentially, door cards, and essentially you're on a turn, you basically kick the door down, draw a card off here, deal with what's inside, and then if you're lucky, you take some treasure cards. So just leafing through these classic things like, alright, got a sleep potion. Play during any combat, +2 to either side. Usable by either side. So what it means by usable by either side is that if you've got it in your hand, you could play it on yourself. If someone else has got it in their hand, they could play it on a monster. Play it against you. and then I mean basically similarly, so a sleep potion is like a classic sort of like fantasy D&D kind of object. Electric radioactive acid potion. So it's just turning the silliness not just up a notch, it's going all the way up to as far as you want. And you know, even to the point where, okay, nasty tasting sports drink. And it's, you know, or yuppie water. I mean, obviously, none of these things would appear in a dungeon as such. You know, basically, or potion of idiotic bravery. But it's the point is it's the parody of those. So you know, potions, rings, loaded die, and this is the other thing about this is that it is not only it's the artwork which carries much of the fun of the game, as much as the types of the cards. Okay, magic missile, like it's a classic Dungeons and Dragons spell. But here, okay, what you've got essentially is your Munchkin armed with a missile. I'm just going through which of many things, you know, knee pads of allure, many classic, essentially, parody items. You know, for example, CC Swiss Army polearm. It takes the mickey out of sort of like the idea of it goes back to the list of polearms in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and just going, you know, what the hell is that? Because back in the day, you go back in 1980 when the Dungeon Master Guide comes out, and you're going, what are these? You've got no obvious resource to run to the basically the internet and go look up those polearms, and sort of like in some ways you know, basically you know, our way of discovering what those things were would have been reading the Dungeons Master's Guide or weapon books, things like that. Also, Rat and a Stick. And Rat and a Stick is actually a parody of another game, Tunnels and Trolls, which is another early fantasy role-playing game. So it didn't just roleplay. It didn't just parody Dungeons and Dragons. It did other fantasy role-playing games. So there, okay. So essentially, Horny Helmet, you know, parody of Vikings, but you know, +1 bonus, +1 for +3 for elves. So this is all the equipment you can have. You know, basically boots of butt kicking, and so essentially you can have. You know, you'd have the boot kicking on, and you wear your your basically your horny helmet, and then you might wear a suit of armor, and so on, and then you might be wielding the chainsaw of bloody dismemberment. Gives you +3 bonus, and it tells you how many hands you've got. You know, basically, so essentially, you can actually you can wield 2 weapons. Okay, if they're both one-handed, they both count. But essentially, great weapon, but it takes 2 hands. And you know, there are other reasons why to play. So you know, there are the cards which automatically let you go up a level. So mutilate the bones, bodies, go up a level. Bribe the GM, go up a level. Whine at the GM, go up, and essentially it's parodying a style of play, things that have happened, and it might not have essentially happened in your game, but it happened in someone else's game and you heard about it, or you know, invoke obscure rules. Okay, so those are the treasure cards that you can reward yourself with. And then the bigger deck is essentially monsters. So you have things like modifiers. Ancient, +10 to the level of the monster. Essentially, it's turning your baby red dragon into an ancient red dragon, or you know, let's have a look. See if we can find another monster. your drooling slime. You know, that's only level 1. Easy to defeat. Add the ancient +10 to the level of the monster, fine. You've just made it sort of like, you know, into the big bad daddy of drooling slimes. So yeah, monsters go up sort of like things like you see. You've got like that ancient that level 1 drooling slime, level 12 wannabe vampire. Level 12 Bigfoot, and I could just go on showing you these great cards. Or level 14 unspeakably awful, indescribable horror. And every monster's got this level, and then essentially bad stuff like unstoppably awful death at any moment but a wizard. A wizard merely loses his powers, discard a wizard card. But if you defeat it, 4 treasures. So the monsters go all the way up to level 20, and the feared plutonium dragon. And then the other thing you can do is you can add a class. So, like warrior. So besides, as well as you actually doing things like you can be a halfling or a cleric. Oh, sorry, halfling or an elf or a dwarf or a human. You can be a warrior, so you can have a class, wizard, thief, cleric, and then you can also multi-class, and you can be male or female, and sometimes the cards will interact as well, depending upon, you know, your race, your class, and your gender. And then there are basically curses and things that will swap those around, or just force you to drop them, which means, okay, suddenly there's a whole lot of equipment that you can't use. The interaction between the cards is very clever, and it's very silly, and that's the point. So yeah, and the other great thing I should point out about the game is the art. The artwork, it's all in this game. It's all basically done in basically 2 tones of brown and white. That's fine. So it's not particularly. It's not the full colour that would come in later versions or iterations of the game, but it's fun artwork done by John Kovalik, who draws Dork Tower and other things, but it's consistent throughout. It gives it a unified look, and it adds to the humour and the fun of the game. So essentially that is Munchkin, a game which I actually, you know what, I do recommend you play. It is fun. It's if you don't only fantasy role-playing game, then it's easy to understand. You're going to get the jokes, and especially if you've been around in the hobby for a while. And you know, okay, even if you don't get the jokes, you're going to get the jokes while somebody's kind of explain it to you, because it is funny, because the way the cards interact, and you suffer luck, good luck and bad luck, and things can set you back. And essentially it says you've got a playing time of about an hour, but honestly probably has, and you can play it in about half an hour, and it's fun. Now it is a take that game. It does get to that point where basically you just pile in on the player who's out to lead, and that is not always fun. But again, it's that sort of like that for the player who's in the lead, it's overcoming a challenge to defeat everyone else, basically their attempts to stop you, and that's fine. So I think it's worth having on the shelf occasionally. And the other thing is that, okay, it's a relatively easy game to teach. And it's also, the other thing about it is it's the languages of role-playing, and most people know what role-playing kind of is, whether they don't need to have done any role-playing. They will at least have learned that language from playing computer games. So they'll be familiar with sort of a lot of the terminology. And as I say, it is simple to play, but the sophistication of the design comes through in the cards and how they interact with each other. It's been heavily play tested to work out how the cards interact, and and how the game works. So yeah, it can be played by long-term players, by basic members of the hobby. You've got all the experience, but it can also be, you use it to introduce sort of like, fantasy elements to a playing group as well. so that is Munchkin. Now, the thing is, honestly, I wasn't expecting to be able to be talking about Munchkin at all. I hadn't even realised that 2001 was its 20th anniversary. But it is, and it's a major seller for Steve Jackson games. And that's in part down to one person. I'm not saying it's all down to him. Don't think that, I'm not saying that. And that's Andrew Hackett, who sadly passed away, and made me think about looking at Munchkin, because he's basically described by Steve Jackson himself as the Munchkin Tsar. So today I was looking and I realised Munchkin is 2001, and I do anniversary reviews, and this has been very successful for Steve Jackson games. So I decided I would get my copy out, review it. Could I find my copy? I couldn't find my copy. A lot of people will be not surprised by that, but with a pointer from my partner saying, oh, it might be on this shelf, I went and looked, and I found this copy. It was on this shelf. It was sealed, so I could do an unboxing. Honestly, if you haven't tried this, I do recommend you go out and play it. It's fun. Okay, try it with your friends, try it with your family. They'll get the humour of it, because at least if not necessarily get the in-jokes, or get the humour of the artwork. And if you've already got a copy, go out and get a copy and play it, just because, you know, just remember how fun it was to play. So yeah, unfortunately, as I say, the reason I got this out to review was the passing of Andrew Hackett this week. Gentleman I only got to meet with once, very nice, very pleasant. He was 2 at the time. I never got to meet him again. So basically, many of the people at Hobby were sad to hear of his passing, and I decided I would look at this in his memory. So yeah, Mr. Hackett, thank you very much for all of these games. I know Steve Jackson designed this game and many of the variations to come, but you have made the game what it is today. Anyway, thank you very much for watching what is a surprisingly long unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, please do click the like button. If you've got any feedback or comments, then I appreciate you making those, and of course I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. But, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook and videos of me out here in the Nook with a nice hot cup of tea, and yes, I promise there will be tea in every single one of these, because I like a nice hot cup of tea, then please do click the subscribe button, and you'll get to watch another video of me with a parcel and chatting away for 10 minutes, or in this case half an hour, which is probably my longest video yet. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.